Hi, it's Kristen and I'm going to celebrate Pride by reading some books. So if you've been following my channel for a while, you know that every June, every Pride month, I like to make a vlog of me reading some books that are about LGBTQ plus characters by LGBTQ plus authors. So that's what we're doing in this video. The first book I plan to read is one for my book club. We've decided that for our June meetup, for our June book choice, we are going to read something LGBT, and we had a little poll, and the thing that won was Sunburn by Chloe Michelle Howarth. This is about a teenage girl who lives in a rural village in Ireland in the 90s, and it's just like a coming of age story. I think she has like a male childhood best friend who everyone thinks she should end up with and who she loves, but not necessarily romantically, and then also has a female best friend who she gets closer and closer to, and I'm assuming they actually develop a relationship. So I feel like it's going to be maybe like sweet teenagehood story, but also like tricky coming of age, especially with like an Irish Catholic setting in the 90s. So that is my book for book club, and I'm going to do that on audio. Then I'm going to physically read In Universes. This is about a main character called Rafi, and it's like parallel universes of them and their relationship maybe with a queer sculptor named Brit, and it's like, what if they'd met at a different time? What if this? What if that? And it's like different alternate universes where different circumstances happen. That sounds really interesting. I got this in a book subscription last year and I've been meaning to get around to it, and it's quite short, so I thought something with a little sci-fi twist seems quite fun. And then lastly, also on audio, but on my library app, I'm going to be reading Harriet Tubman live in concert by Bob the Drag Queen, because I've almost like run out of time to listen to this and I don't think I can renew it again. So I've been meaning to listen to this for ages. I love Bob the Drag Queen. I discovered them through RuPaul's Drag Race, as many people did, and they are one of my favourite drag queens from that show. And this is about, I think, if people who've like previously died, like Harriet Tubman, suddenly like came back, and it's Harriet Tubman getting in contact with this like hip hop producer or songwriter or something, and then working on a project together, which sounds so bizarre and interesting. But I love Bob the Drag Queen and like the verses and raps they come up with. I think they're such a creative, interesting person. So I'm excited to listen to that because Bob narrates the audiobook, and I think there are like songs throughout it, like in the narrative, but also a couple of like Bob's own tracks at the end of the audiobook. So that'll be interesting. So I'm doing 2 audiobooks and 1 small physical book. I did have other books planned for this initially, but in order to get this out before the end of the month, I think I'm just going to stick to the audiobooks and the short physical book. So yes, those are the 3 books I'm going to be reading. Let's get into them. I've been out and about all day, so hot and sweaty. I've come home, I've had a shower, I've got changed, and yeah, wanted to give you my thoughts so far on Sunburn, because I started this morning on audiobook and I've been listening to it the whole time I was out and about. I had it on, I think, like 1.5 speed, and then as I got used to the story and the narrator's voice, I sped it up, so now I'm on like 2 times speed. And I've got over halfway through, I believe. So the audiobook itself is like 9 hours something, 9 hours and 24 minutes, and I have 3 hours 19 minutes left. I have paused on chapter 14. I think doing it on audio was a good idea because our audiobook narrator is Irish, and I feel like that adds so much to like the essence of the book, this small Irish town, than it would have necessarily if I'd read it, or I would have had to keep like mentally reading it in an Irish accent. But I feel like the characters feel really alive. The relationship between the teenage girls and their like girl group, friendship group, feels really realistic in that like sometimes they're a bit bitchy about like other people they know. They also just like have a bit of jealousy between them, where like when a couple of them are hanging out a lot more than the others or something. And it reminded me of like when I was a teenage girl and just in general like the whole teenage vibe feels very realistic. It's like a whole bit where our main character Lucy doesn't have a crush on this guy Martin because she realizes she doesn't like boys, but he gets with another girl and she gets really uppity about it. She's like, I don't like him, but I don't want him to like anyone else. Which I'm like, that, yeah, that feels real. That feels like such a teenage thing. So like it is entertaining me, it's amusing me in some points, but it's also just like so sad to read about this girl who has like such an intense relationship with her best friend, and like they really love each other, and like their parents finding out and them having to like deny their feelings, and Lucy very much having to like force this relationship with this guy, and that's the only way that she can like get her mum's attention back, is to like pretend to be with this guy, and she knows that what she's doing is wrong, like leading him on, but she's also like, this is how I like continue having a relationship with my mother, with my family. And it's just so sad, and it's like I really sympathize with her and like how difficult it must be, because like we're in the 90s, like very much frowned upon still, especially in like Ireland, to be in a relationship with 2 women. So I really sympathise with Lucy and everything she's going through, but at the same time I do feel for Martin, because it's like he is being led on, but I understand why Lucy's doing it. But then I feel so bad for Susanna, because Lucy's having this like real relationship with her while also having a fake relationship with Martin. But then there are moments where Susanna like almost tries to like push Lucy's boundaries of like being open about her sexuality in a way that like felt kind of gross, because like Lucy very much not ready to come out and doesn't see that as like a realistic thing that she is going to be able to do. But then I understand Susanna wanting to be open and free with her feelings, and it's like it's so messy, it's so complicated, and I really feel for like everyone in the situation apart from the like homophobic parents. Like, it's very intense, it's very like emotional, very messy, like I said, I've got 3 hours 20-ish minutes left, so I'm gonna, I think, listen to it tomorrow because I've listened to a lot today. I feel like I need to take a step back, let the story like ruminate in my mind, and then I will finish it tomorrow because my book club is on Sunday. It's Friday today, so I'll finish it tomorrow and then I'll be able to have thoughts. I might do like an update after my book club to like share additional thoughts and like opinions that other people have had, and I think that always makes me think more when there's like a conversation and I like get ideas from people that I hadn't thought of, or yeah, people make me look at things in a different way or like reaffirm my thoughts and opinions. So yes, I will continue listening, give you another update and have my book club. It's a lot. I think I just need to lie down now. It's so warm out. I've been walking all morning with just headphones in really intensely into this story, so I need to like close my eyes and lie down in a dark room. Just got back from book club talking about Sunburn by Chloe Michelle Howarth, and the general consensus was that we liked it but didn't love it. I thought the author like really captured being a teenager very well, and that felt really realistic, and I loved the like hazy summer atmosphere, and there were like a few quotes or bits of writing that I thought were really like emotional or evocative and just like really well written moments or like sentences, phrases, but that it's not necessarily a book that's gonna like stick with me. It was a decent read, but I'll get to the end of the year and be like, oh yeah, I read that. It's not one that's gonna cement itself in my brain as like something brilliant that I've read this year. But I'm not like mad that I read it, and I think we had some interesting discussions at book club about the really messy relationships between the characters. There were interesting conversations about like class between the families in the book, some of them being rich or having the appearance of being rich and more well off, other characters being more working class, and how the different perceptions of that fed into the relationships and like the choices the characters made in terms of relationships and stability. And it's one of those difficult books where like Lucy as a main character isn't necessarily particularly likable, but I did sympathize with her a lot when she was like not wanting to come out and really wanting like her mum to love her. That was very sad to read about, and I was really sympathetic towards her, and I was sympathetic towards Susanna in parts, but then Susanna also did stuff that pissed me off, and I was sympathetic towards Martin as well, and it's just messy relationships. No one was like super likable, but I did, like I said, have sympathy, empathy for all of them at some point, apart from, like I said before, the parents who were just kind of awful. Came to a 3.25 between all of us overall, because we pretty much averagely rated it 3 stars, a couple of 4 stars in there. A couple of people didn't really like it and so gave it 2 stars, so it did balance out to a 3.25. A good book club pick, because we did discuss a lot. We picked it for Pride Month, so that was nice, and it was a good book to read in the summer also when it's been like so hot, because it definitely had that summer like close feeling atmosphere to the writing. And we were saying we think it would make a good adaptation along the lines of like Normal People. I'd be interested to like see that happen. One of those books that like if you already have it on your TBR, I'd say like give it a go. You might very well enjoy it. It's like a decent read.
it's not like not worth your time. But I am quite glad I didn't end up buying this, because it was just a very like okay book, and it's one that like I wouldn't just generally recommend, but I think there are like certain people I might recommend it to if they wanted this kind of book that's very like just character study, almost just focus on the characters, not a lot happening other than in their own internal lives and their relationships with each other. So yeah, an all right book, which sort of surprises me because I've seen just so many positive things, so many high recommendations on like social media. I've seen like nothing but positive things about it, and yet we all just thought it was okay.
So I've been reading In Universes by Emmett North, and this is an interesting one because it's not what I thought it was going to be. The description very much made me think it was gonna be like sci-fi, maybe even like aware of these alternate universes, but it's not really. We have our main character in the first time like being very like fed up with life and not really like feeling accomplished or like they're in a particularly positive place, and then they meet um, Brit and they're like, oh, we knew each other when we were younger, but like I've only like talked to her now. What would it have been like? And then the next chapter is them meeting when they're younger, and then the next chapter doesn't even like have Brit in it, and it's a sort of apocalyptic version of the world with some of the same characters, but they have different relationships with each other to the previous chapter. So it's not like the characters are hopping to alternate universes. It's more just like very slice of life. These cast of characters who, yeah, in each story know each other in different ways or encounter each other in different ways, come across each other, interact with each other. In some, someone is a friend, in another they're a roommate, in another they're a love interest. So it's interesting and it is fairly easy to read, but it's not necessarily what I thought it was. But that's not the book's fault, that's me making assumptions. But it's a bit not draining to read, but it's a bit intense sometimes because Rafi, our main character, he's quite like lost in their life, feels very lost. He's quite like depressed. There was one story in particular where they're like contemplating suicide or just have like suicidal thoughts throughout the chapter. So it's yeah, it's not like a super fun, quick, easy read. So I'm currently on chapter 6, A Beautiful House Built Underwater, which is a little under halfway through. So I will let you know what I think. I think each chapter does capture like their essence of that chapter very well, because there was one of like Brit and Rafi meeting when they're younger girls and like spending summer together, and that definitely had like a hazy summer day vibe, a bit like Sunburn, to be honest. And then there was a chapter, What Is Left to Fear, which is this like future world where it's just like snowy and all the animals have been like taken over by like an alien life form in their head, so all the animals are like very dangerous and will attack humans, and that one was really interesting to read. So I'm hoping there's more that are a bit more like out there, not just what if you lived your life pretty much the same as you are now, but like met people at different points. I hope there are a few more that are like, what if this crazy thing had happened? So I'm liking it so far, but it's not wowing me.
Okay, I was saying I wondered if there was going to be another weirder chapter that felt less realistic in any sense. And the one I just read was definitely weird. So in this one, Rafi is married to Kay, who has popped up in other stories as like a friend or the girlfriend of someone else. In this one, Kay is Rafi's wife, and she has an octopus like growing in her. So that was weird. The cover definitely makes more sense to me now. A lot of these stories have to do with water in some sense. We've got an octopus, and Rafi spends a lot of their time in this story in the bath, pushing themselves like underwater and trying to stay underwater. And in the story before that one, a lot of it takes place on a beach, and Rafi walks into the sea a lot, and they build like sandcastles and stuff. Yeah, that story was very weird. I'm intrigued to see what other kinds of stories we're gonna get. I think I may only have a few left. I'm now just over halfway through the book. Again, I don't know that I'm like super enjoying this, but I am finding it intriguing, interesting concepts. But a lot again about like depression and suicidal thoughts and stuff like that. So be wary of that when going into this if you pick this up.
We're definitely still doing weird stories. The last one I read was still about like Rafi and Kay's relationship in like another universe, another version of their relationship. But in this one, every time someone gives birth, they split into a bunch of different creatures. So, like when Rafi's mother gives birth to them, their mum became a mother horde of bees. And it's this thing of just every time someone gives birth, their mum or their parent becomes a group of beavers, a group of eagles, etc. And then people who aren't mothers yet, who aren't parents, aren't having children, start also bursting into these hordes of animals, and Rafi gets worried about like when it'll happen to them because they've not committed to like having children, so they thought they were like safe, and they were just like, well, I'm never going to burst into a bunch of animals because I'm probably not going to have children, so it won't happen to me. And like if that does happen, like I'm making the choice to have a child, I'm making the choice to become this horde of creatures. But then yeah, gets very paranoid about the fact that now it seems like that's not just a genetic at birth thing. So that one was a weird one.
I finished reading In Universes by Emmett North. I thought each story had an interesting concept, and some worked a little better than others for me, but each story definitely had at least like one moment that I thought was particularly interesting, or like created a very interesting visual. So like in the one that's about the animals attacking people, there's like a mini subplot thing of how Rafi's friend Kay like taxidermies people, the people they've come across who've been killed and who've died. Kay taxidermies, and then they just have them in the house, which I thought was like an interesting way to portray like grief in some parts, but then some of these people they didn't know, or they were just like a neighbor, they weren't anyone close to them, but it was a way of like keeping their memory alive, or like their version of honoring that person who died. So that was interesting. And then we had another story which dealt with Rafi slowly having their body go numb and losing feeling in like different parts of their body at different points. And that one was like a really sweet, sentimental, sad story, which I quite enjoyed in a weird way. And then there was a story called The House of Discontent, which was about grief primarily, and how Rafi has this like mental house where they have different rooms for different feelings, and then they sort of try to physically make this house. So they have like the room of what you should have done, a room of missed opportunities, a room of wasted moments, a room of secret shames, but they also have a room of unexpected joy. So even though they have the room of unexpected joy, they say its name remained the House of Discontent, but it didn't mind. It knew that whatever its name, it had enough rooms for every sort of emotion. The most significant limitation of the physical House of Discontent is that its space is finite. Rafi is both relieved and alarmed by this limitation. They are already daunted by the work in front of them, but how are they supposed to fit all their sadness into a bounded space? I thought that was so beautiful. And yeah, so many of these stories are very like evocative, really interesting, like I said, like visuals, interesting thoughts, and especially focusing on grief, life, death, those sorts of things. And I did find the queer elements in here interesting, because we have some stories where Rafi seems to be presenting as a woman, uses like she, her pronouns, dates men and women. There are other stories where Rafi uses like they, their pronouns, and stories where some people in a story who were referred to as like he, him, in another story they are referred to using they, them pronouns. And so it's like in each story their queerness, either like gender or sexuality, is different. And I think that's interesting in terms of like, I don't know, a nature nurture question, or just how like one person has potentially the capability to be different in like very lived experience ways in each of these universes. But I don't know, because there was no like conclusive thing like tying off all the stories together or rounding them up. I don't know that we get an actual sense of like what the author was trying to say about queerness in that way, and like maybe we don't need that. but I just thought it was interesting to note. I do think that this, like, not to the book's fault, but like my fault, wasn't exactly what I was expecting. I was expecting more like sci-fi in terms of alternate universes, but this is definitely more literary fiction with like a slight sci-fi bent to it. But you could definitely, I think, take each of these short stories and just have them as a short story, and it would still make sense, not even connecting them through having these same or similar characters throughout each one. I do think they like stand alone, which is like kind of good in that you could just like occasionally pick this up and you wouldn't need a ton of context. Overall, I thought it was interesting. I'm just using the word interesting over and over. Thought it was interesting, had some great concepts, but I didn't love it. It was okay, and it's not one necessarily that I would like widely recommend. I think if you like literary fiction, short stories, interesting concepts, slight sci-fi element but not actually getting too sci-fi, little bit weirdness, then this could be one for you. But again, I will reiterate, lots of talk about like grief and death and like suicide or suicidal ideation, so be aware of that when going into here. Because of like the queer elements, there is a bit of like homophobia, lesbophobia in here, so yeah, be like wary of all those things if you are gonna potentially pick this up. It took me like a week to read it, which I feel like, considering it was so short, I thought I was gonna fly through it, but because it definitely is more like short stories rather than feeling like a through narrative, I was just picking it up bit by bit instead of like blasting through it. But an okay, interesting book. I'm not mad that I read it, but it's not like a new beloved book. I'm sure I'll think about it. It's one of those like interesting books that I think I'm gonna think about, because like I said, there were moments or interesting concepts throughout that, like, in a way I would have loved to see some stories like more developed than others, given a bit more time, because they intrigued me. But overall, not a bad book. Doing it like an interesting thing. I think it's quite a bold way to like write a novel. Like, definitely like interesting ideas, not necessarily stories that I would have thought of. So like kudos to the author for just having like a very slightly bizarre introspective imagination. So a decent read.
So yesterday I listened to the entirety of Harriet Tubman live in concert by Bob the Drag Queen, because it was only like 4.5 or so hours long on audiobook, and I listen at like 1.75-ish speed, so I got through it really quickly, and I was like doing stuff around the house, and then I was out and about, so I just had lots of opportunity to listen, and I liked it. I think I would give it like a 3.5. I really liked the audiobook. Like I said, Bob the Drag Queen narrates it, so you really get like a lot of passion in it. The like rap bits work really well. He embodies the main character so well, and I guess because like he wrote it and he's narrating it, when there's dialogue, he makes it feel really natural, because he obviously knows exactly how he like intended it to sound when he wrote it. So I really liked that. I liked the story. Obviously there's a lot of discussion around race and slavery, and you get to hear the stories of all these different characters who were alive in the past and their different struggles and their stories of how they became free and the lives they lived, and those were all incredibly interesting. So just from like a historical point of view, very interesting to listen to. And then I also liked the part 2 of the book, which focused a lot on Darnell and his coming out story, or like more so his forced coming out story. That was really interesting, and again, lots of discussions about like race and how that intersects with sexuality and the way that people who are queer and black are perceived, especially in certain like jobs, like queer black men in hip hop, and how they are seen, and you know how stuff like gender and sexuality can really like make or break your career. Quite like serious issues, so it's not like a super fun book based on like actual subject matter within the story, but I do think it's quite funny, and it definitely taps into like Bob the Drag Queen's sense of humour if you know them as like a drag queen as their like persona. It feels very Bob the Drag Queen, which I liked. And the bonus 2 songs at the end I really liked. In particular, the first one I think was my favourite. I just thought they sounded great. The only reason I'm not giving it more than like a 3.5 is that although I understand that Bob was trying to get across like their points, what they were saying, their message, sometimes it felt like a little bit heavy-handed, a little bit like telling, not showing. So that's just like my slight issue with it. And honestly, I feel like it could have been a longer novel. It's such an interesting concept. I would have loved like more of it. So overall, a really interesting, imaginative read. I would definitely recommend to fans of historical novels that like centre around historical figures and people who like music, and for anyone who's a fan of Bob the Drag Queen, I think you'd like it. So yeah, another good book. So that is everything. I did Sunburn on audio, then I did In Universes physically, and then I did Harriet Tubman live in concert on audio, and I liked all of them for different reasons to varying degrees. Sunburn was like a 3-star, In Universe is 3-star, Harriet Tubman live in concert 3.5, so that one was my favourite. But I don't feel like I've wasted my time reading any of them. Sunburn was a book club book, so that was a fun discussion. In Universes, it's been on my TBR for a while and was like bought for me by friends, so I'm glad I got to that. And then Harriet Tubman live in concert is one that I've been meaning to read for ages and not getting around to, and I needed to return it to the library. So yeah, glad I read all of them, found them all interesting in different ways. And within Pride Month, I'm glad I've read from authors and characters all representing like different parts of the community. We have like gay men, lesbians, non-binary characters, just like queer umbrella term characters. And yeah, I'm happy. If you've got any recommendations for more good fictional books about like trans characters, that is something that I feel like I'm lacking on my TBR, and I would really love to read more more books in the T of the LGBTQ plus acronym, because yeah, I feel like I read quite a lot of books with characters of different sexualities, but not necessarily as many books about like non-binary or trans characters. So if you have good recommendations, leave them below, or just, you know, like any LGBT books, always looking for great recommendations. But yeah, particularly for like trans characters, trans authors. But that is all for this Pride themed vlog. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon with another video. Bye!